Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Sylvia and Peter talking about mental health and problems related to mental health and well-being. The one we are dealing with today is the language we use, either us professionals or everybody else out there picking up bits and pieces of psychological or mental health terminology and using it wrong. Mm-hmm. And that can be quite irritating for some people who actually do suffer from something. So if I just illustrate the point that we're trying to make by a comment made by one of my clients who suffered from OCD for 40, almost 50 years. She and I worked our way through her OCD and she is now pretty much recovered from that. And what she can't stand is when people say, oh, I'm a little bit OCD about this, or I'm a little bit OCD about that. Okay. Instead of saying that, say, I like a clean desk, or I'm house proud. That's fine, not a problem. But you can't, when somebody who has OCD, you can't say, oh, I'm a little bit OCD about that, because it completely ridicules a very serious condition that totally ruined her life for all those decades.
Definitely. I had a situation at the college where I'm the learner specialised support. I had a young student there who had been clinically diagnosed with PTSD, and quite often in the college, you know, yes, it's a bit of a dramatic environment. Quite a few of the students, oh yeah, I've got PTSD, or someone will say, oh, I've got OCD today. Oh, my OCD is really bad today. And a lot of it, in my opinion, was because with this mental health awareness, raising our awareness of all these different mental ill health conditions, which when they are clinically diagnosed on a DSM-5 or the ICD-11, they are illnesses and conditions. And the young student, when she was hearing the other students saying, oh, my PTSD is really bad today, would really get really affected, because to be diagnosed with PTSD is powerful. It's an illness. It is severe to be diagnosed with PTSD, and for the other students to sometimes use it in a quite flippant, meaningless environment was really triggering for the student that I work with. So we can, whilst all this awareness is fabulous and using all this different wording, we have to be mindful that there may be people in those environments who really do have a diagnosis of OCD, PTSD, general anxiety disorders, general depressive disorders, and using this language quite flippantly, potentially, without any malintent, can actually be very triggering for other people and very annoying too. I totally agree.
It is almost, isn't it, as if it's become fashionable to use these terms where you say, oh, I'm so depressed today.
Yeah.
No, actually, you're not. You're busy. You're not depressed, or you have a bad day. But depression, as we know, does not happen overnight. It's something that creeps up on you. It builds up, and then it becomes full-blown to whatever extent it gets for you. And a trend that I've also noticed is everyone you don't like, I'm generalizing a lot here, is so narcissistic.
Yeah.
It's
I've been hearing that a lot lately. Oh, he's a narcissist, she's a narcissist. Yeah. I've even had one student come to me and say, I am a narcissist. What have you based that on? It's a word that's creeping in more and more.
So I think we as a general population try to be clever and use big words. And I'm sure it happens in other industries as well, but you and I, being the professionals, knowing what's behind something like narcissism, for example, there are a number of criteria you have to fulfill in order to get a diagnosis, if you like. But just because you're rude, you're ill-behaved, and you're selfish doesn't mean that you're a narcissist. A narcissist very often have a bigger problem than what they cause for the victims, because they feel so insecure and all these negative things going on in their life. So you have to really be careful about how you label people with no basis whatsoever.
And it's interesting too when people start to talk about a subject Behind every face there is a story. And whilst we can't know everyone's story, it's just being mindful of the language that we're using, just in case there is someone in the room. And I think for me, it's more knowledge about what that terminology actually means, so that we use it appropriately and correctly. As I said earlier, there's no malintent involved. If people were more cognizant of what it actually means, we may then use it in the context correctly as it's supposed to be used, without the potential for it inflaming and upsetting people. Although we don't know that, because it's not like written across the forehead of anyone. Just be more mindful of the language that we are using.
Yeah. And another trend that I have seen is ADHD. If someone, a child or an adult, is maybe a little bit restless or not quite conforming to somebody's norm, they throw this label out there. He or she's got ADHD, typical ADHD, without really knowing what it takes to understand what type of ADHD, where does it come from, and how does it affect the person. But we are very quick to just throw out that little label, because it kind of explains something we can't explain. It's great to just close it all down by saying this person is such and such. Problem solved, we can move on.
I'm finding it a lot at the colleges, where there is, had instances just in the last few weeks, someone's been tested for ADHD, someone else is being tested for autism. They may well be, but there's this default. To your point, a lot of it is to make sense of something that we can't ourselves, but it's not always ADHD or autism. There may be other things going on. And it's as if, many people seem to better hang their hat on something. It's because that. It's because of this. It may well be, but it's what happens next. And that understanding that the ADHDs and the autisms isn't a mental health issue. Yes, they can be coexistent, but that's a neurodiversity matter.
Correct.
And for people then to understand there is a difference, but then there can be some mental health matters alongside. But this automatic, let's go and get tested. Yes, to make sense, but it's not always that's the case.
And I think the internet, Dr. Google, has a lot to answer for, because people are looking for answers, and they will believe what somebody says on TikTok. I come up against TikTok very often in my practice, that someone has heard the wisdom and the truth on TikTok, and then I have to bring things back down to earth and some reality into it. But you can find anything, any answer you want on the internet. There's always a website that will satisfy your hunger for the answer you're looking for. But it may be a complete bag of nonsense that you find. But because you're in a vulnerable position, you will almost believe anything. And, it's free. There's no accountability on anyone. You can just spend your night, your evening rummaging the internet and find the answers you think suit you. But it can cause far more problems if it's not a reliable source.
And this seems to tap into, and again, to generalization, however, the human beings need to make sense of things. Why is this happening? Perhaps it's because I've got ADHD or autism or depression or anxiety or PTSD or OCD, and almost like pre-diagnosing themselves, whereas those things really need to be diagnosed by professionals. I've heard people say that I've been to my GP and I've told them I have OCD. It's not really how it should work.
No.
But their belief, and that's the thing, they then create that belief that they do have it. And then if they do go for testing and they're told they're not, then you have another set of circumstances where their belief that they were, it's not proven. Then what do they do? What is the cause of that certain behavior? So yes, it's a It's a really interesting topic about the use of the language and how powerful the language that we use is. And I think that's all too often people forget the power of the words that we use.
And the power of the words, as you say, is not something that we feel ourselves, but we do not know what the people are, who they are, what they have gone through, who sit around us in the pub, on the train, next desk up in the office. We don't know what background they have and how that can actually, as you said about the student at the college, really trigger a very bad episode of feeling bad or being annoyed and irritated because people just don't understand, but sound as if they do. What can we do about it? How do we get over this one? I think we can only educate when we get to the situations.
I think a lot of it comes back to so many times in so many things in so many areas. It comes back to education. Education in terms of what these things mean, and coming back to the student I was working with, she used to say to me, I feel like screaming to these people, that's not PTSD, this is PTSD, and it's because of this. But of course, she didn't want to, because then she would have to disclose what she's been through. Yes. So you then sit there holding on to, she used to sit holding on to her stuff, which makes it worse and it inflames it again. But I think it does come back to education. Where that happens, I firmly believe more education should be in schools. That's my own personal belief. But at the same time, not to overkill and get that balance between the language that you use then becomes meaning less. It needs to mean more.
What you and I can do immediately and what other people can do is, if you know what it means, educate as and when you hear someone talk nonsense. And if you're not quite sure that you actually know what the term means, just use an ordinary one, everyday term. It's just as effective. You don't become clever or someone bigger and better than you are by using fancy language that comes back and bite you in the end anyway. So on that note, I think we should let other people give us their experiences of having been on the receiving end of these conversations, or actually maybe one of you will own up to using it wrongly. I don't know, but let us hear what you think. It's been a pleasure as usual talking with you, Sylvia, and we shall do it again later.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from the audience what they think. Yes.
Take care. Bye now.
See you later. Bye-bye.